Hey everybody, it's Jay from Bonsai's Forever. Welcome to another episode. Gonna be working on some citrus trees today. It's wintertime, so I'm gonna be doing some winter cleanup, and I'm also gonna be repotting quite a few of them. The soil that I was using this last year, this summer, whatever, it wasn't doing so good. I couldn't get the trees to absorb enough water. I don't know if you can see how curly the leaves are. That comes from not having enough water. So, and this one is looking kind of sad. So shoot, I think this is actually a cutting that I rooted this last winter. So this is the growth from the summer and kind of got a little rough at the end of the year. I think that the soil is part of the reason. Couldn't keep them watered enough to keep them from having their leaves curl. So I'm gonna do some repotting. I'm gonna do some trimming. I'm gonna trim most of them. I'm gonna cut them way back. They grew a lot. They didn't grow great, but they did put quite a bit of growth on. So I'm gonna go back and clean them up. I'm gonna repot them, see if I can do some more freely draining soil, and using potting soil though with some perlite in it, so that the soil will drain more freely so it's not sopping wet, which is kind of what happened, thinking back on this whole summer, trying to think about what happened to the trees, I guess, to figure out why they're not growing as good as they could. So the soil, it gets super wet using just compost. So I'm going to mix a bunch of perlite in there to help it drain a little bit better, so that the soil isn't sopping wet and it just gets as wet as it needs to, and then starts drying out so that the roots can have some oxygen, because getting the proper amount of oxygen and water to the roots is how you get the trees to grow better. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to clean up some of the foliage, and I've got quite a few of them, so I'm going to just do pieces and parts of each tree on film here, so that I could show you some pointers and what's going on with stuff, and look at the roots on some of them, and talk about why I'm pruning, what branches I'm pruning, and all that kind of stuff. And then so that the video's not too long, because this is probably going to take me a couple hours to do this. So let's get started. Okay, for taking the soil out of the trees, I'm going to use a bigger tray today, because I've got quite a few trees, and I always save my compost, or save the soil for compost, and I'll save the branches in a different pot. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the tree up so that it's being held up by the pot that it's currently in. I think I might, on this one, just take the ends of the leaves off that are dead and gross. And this one quite possibly had some kind of leaf borer, because the leaves look like they were kind of like eaten from the inside rather than from the outside. You can tell if it's like a caterpillar, because we get a lot of caterpillars out here too. So like this leaf was eaten by a caterpillar, and like this leaf was not eaten by a caterpillar, because the caterpillar is going to eat the whole leaf. So that looks like some kind of leaf borers. So I'm going to get rid of all of these leaves that have that on all the trees, and then it is wintertime, so I'm not too worried about more caterpillars and leaf borers right now. But springtime comes, I'm gonna definitely hose them down with some neem oil and dish soap. I use Dawn dish soap. I don't know if it matters much. I've always used it, so I like it. But I'm gonna get all these leaves off of here for now, so that it will help prevent the leaf borers from next year. I'm not going to say that it's going to completely take care of it, but getting rid of infected leaves is going to definitely help. And that one was eaten by either a caterpillar or a grasshopper. We've got a lot of grasshoppers here too. I'm pretty sure you have grasshoppers anywhere. Oh, this is going to take off almost all the leaves here. I don't want to take off all the leaves. I want to leave as many as I can, but I definitely want to get off as many of the bad leaves as I can also. So with the branching on this one, I actually kind of like it for now. So I'm going to leave the branches on this one. So now I'm going to go ahead and repot this one. And I'm going to keep it in this size pot because the roots aren't terribly, it's not root bound in the pot, but this is really wet soil, and it's been a couple of days since I watered this. All right, I'm going to take for sure the top layer of the soil off because that's where most of the weeds are at. So I'm going to try and get rid of all the weeds by taking the top layer of soil off. And I'm also going to be looking for some type of structural roots to start growing a nabari on this tree. There is actually a couple of decent size roots here. I'll show you here in just a second. I do want to get quite a bit of this soil off of it though, because it just isn't doing well with the tree. So honestly, I might almost bare root these to get as much of this just straight compost out of here as I can. All right, so it does have a couple of really thick pieces right here. And it's got some roots growing up the trunk a little bit. I think I'm going to take this side off, but I'm going to leave the other side on. This one's much higher, but I'm going to leave this one on. I'm going to let this be the soil level. I'm going to take the two really big ones off the bottom, just like that. Okay, so I keep my compost and soil underneath my bench here so I can get to it pretty easily. So I'm going to put it in a bucket so y'all can see what I'm doing. Alright, so basically what I'm going to do, we'll take a couple of scoops of it, and that's what it looks like. The compost has got some larger pieces of stuff in it still. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to put a couple of scoops into the bottom of the container. We'll pack it down a little bit just with the end of the spade here. So I'm going to put it about that high in the pot. So you can see that the roots are pretty spread out here. So I'm going to just kind of pour this soil through the roots, and then I'll chopstick it into the roots a little bit. It's not quite like bonsai soil, so you don't have to worry as much about that because it'll get in there as you water it also. And you can wiggle the tree around a little bit. At the sides, that gets it down in there also. And then the tree, obviously, it'll stand up after a little while. I got some of the larger pieces of stuff out here. Put it in the other compost bucket for now. Alright. Then I use chopstick. I'm going to use the larger end of the chopstick for this part. Alright, and then I'm going to bring the soil level above the root base so that those roots on the surface can keep getting larger or keep getting thicker. Alright, so there's that. And that's what's going to happen with all the trees. So I'll be right back with another tree. Alright, so here's this tree. And we're gonna go ahead and cut off the unnecessary items on this tree. Also, it did have some of the same leaf problems as the other tree, so we're gonna definitely get rid of all of that. I'm gonna look at all the trees and figure if I want to keep branches or not keep branches, because bending orange trees, I have tried it and it does work, but it takes a long time for it to work, because just for some reason once you bend the branch, they grow. Like, this was the tree and this was like a tiny little shoot right here at the beginning of the year, and it kind of looks like, I don't know, it really looks like that was the tree, and then this is what grew over this last season. And it's typical for the citrus trees to do that. Citrus being orange and grapefruits, the cuties, the lemons and limes. As far as I've seen, they do that. They grow a branch and then it just takes off, and it grows faster than the rest of the tree. So if I want to make this into a branch and just have it be a branch sticking out this way, because I could pull this way. I wouldn't use this pot, although this pot was hit by a weed whacker, I think, because it's damaged there and there. So it might have been hit by the weed whacker. So it might not be a bad thing to put a piece of wire through that and pull this over here. But the thing is, the branches are super, super solid, and I don't know for sure if different part of the year they are more flexible. I don't know if there's a different part of the year that I could bend them easier. I should look into that, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to find content on YouTube for sure about citrus and doing bonsai with them. You can find videos all day of cut it here and cut it there, and the tree is huge, and they're trying to get it stronger to grow more fruit. But there isn't a whole lot of videos on how to bonsai a citrus tree. There's a guy on YouTube. His name is Nigel Saunders. He is the creator of the Bonsai Zone. He has a couple of, I think it's an orange tree, and it's pretty amazing. That's an awesome tree. And he doesn't wire his trees typically. I think I've seen him wire one tree in the whole time I've watched him. I don't know if he's done more. I haven't watched every single one of his videos. But anyway, so he's done the clip and grow method on it. So I'm trying to decide, I guess, all this rambling, what I'm trying to decide is whether I want to make this the tree or whether I want to make this the tree now. So do I want to clip this in a fashion to where it's growing branches this way, or do I want to leave this and cut this off to make this a branch? And I think what I'm going to do, because I want this to get bigger, I want it to be about as tall as it is, maybe slightly shorter. For now, I'm probably going to put this one in the ground too. So, but it's going to be next year. I want to get them pretty solid before I put them in the ground. So I'm going to cut this off. I'll stop rambling and just get to work, or else this is going to take me all day. I'm going to cut it off to where these two are the branches, because you want to go from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, so I'm going to cut it off right here to make it one branch into 2 branches, and that gets rid of all this. And I'm going to try and propagate this into any tree from cutting, and I'll probably do it like this though, because I'm going to cut this off. Just a quick propagation lesson here. Make that a tree, because doing this that close to the ground and having only that be the trunk, it looks really funky, because then you've got a double, it looks like 2 trees coming out of the ground instead of a tree with a trunk. So that'll be a tree, and this will be a tree, and then I'll cut the really thick part off of here, because that'll propagate roots a little bit easier. Alright, I'm going to put this up here so that it's out of the way. Alright, so there's that. That makes a huge difference. Now it looks like a tree instead of a cluster of branches and then tree-like all around it. So these trees, they grow a bunch of branches out of one section. And that is a very typical growth pattern. They'll grow a branch and then they'll have a whole bunch of branches coming out of one spot going in all kinds of different directions. So I always trim it back to 2 branches in the best direction for the tree to support fruit later on, and also to support growth and space for each branch to be able to breathe and have its own, have its own space. I'm gonna cut this one off because it's really thick. That was like 10 times thicker than the branch that's right next to it. They do that a lot also. As they grow, they'll grow a new branch right next to an older branch, and that new branch will grow like 50 times faster than the original branch. So as they're growing throughout the season, I mean, it's not a huge deal at this size because this probably isn't going to end up being a bonsai, but if you are doing a bonsai that is a citrus, you got to really watch that, because obviously this was the tree, this was a tiny little shoot off the side here, bam, and that didn't grow as much. So they do that a lot, and they do that at the end of branches, at the canopy, like anywhere on the tree. It'll just start growing a new shoot and it'll just take off. And if you let it take off, then it's going to be this giant branch amongst a whole bunch of twiggy branches. So maybe that's why people don't really do a whole lot of citrus trees as bonsai trees. So I'm going to go ahead and repot this. I'm going to pull it out of the pot for you guys so you can see what the roots look like, and then I'll just repot it and grab another tree. So this doesn't look too bad. It's got quite a few roots on it, but it's not root bound. But this soil it's like mud, so it's not very good for this tree. So I'm going to go ahead and do the repot. I'll let you see the roots after I take a lot of the soil off. I decided to change the method of taking the soil off of this one. I used my garden hose. So I'm going to leave this really good taproot right here. This is from a seed originally, and I haven't taken the taproot off yet, which I'm not going to, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to put this in the ground. So I'm going to leave the taproot, so when we get super high winds out here, or hurricane or whatever we get, it will hopefully stay in the ground. I'm probably going to keep it pretty short, so that'll help. One of the biggest reasons why I did this, though, was to show you what the roots should look like. So these are in potting soil, so they might look different in bonsai soil, but they all are pretty thick roots. I mean, even the feeder roots are relatively thick, and these are new feeder roots too. You can see, if I can show you the tips, are really white, light colored roots. So these are all feeder roots. You got some of this structural roots here on the sides, new feeder root right here. But this is what they look like. So if you are cleaning up the roots and you find some very fine hair-like roots in there, that's from weeds, because weeds most of the time have really fine roots, especially if it's like a type of grass. We're going to repot this guy, and I'll go ahead and do this, and then I'll show you afterwards, because it's going to be, I'm going to set it up a little bit higher in the pot, like here, because it's got this edge, so I might go to the edge of the pot, so like that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll come back. Okay, so that one's in the pot, nice and solid. Now that I'm standing up, I'm looking at the top of the tree, looking it over. It looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one back out. Actually, I'm going to chop this back a little bit farther because this branch is going to be one of those branches I was talking about. This thing's going to go absolutely crazy. So I'm going to chop the tip of it off right up here. And then once this grows a branch right here, then I'll cut that back again. So I'll go grab another tree. Here's this one. Dirt right down there. All right. So let's, if this got whacked with the weed whacker right here too. All right. And just so you know, these do have thorns on them. I haven't mentioned that. Well, I might have mentioned it in one of my previous videos. This one also had some kind of bugs on it. My biggest thing has been the caterpillars. These caterpillars are ferocious. They'll just chew up a whole freaking branch of the tree, like a newer branch. They'll eat the whole branch. The butterflies are really pretty. They're a really cool yellow color, really smooth wings, just really pretty. But I don't like them on the trees. And those caterpillars grow really fast. I think caterpillars typically grow pretty fast anyway, but I'm hoping that I don't have to take too many leaves off of all these trees. I don't want to stunt the growth of the trees. I want them to actually grow faster if I can get them to. If you get stuck by one of the thorns, you'll definitely know it. Okay, so here's kind of a spot, like I was mentioning before, where the branches grow all crazy together. Let me grab. Alright, so I grabbed the camera here. You can see it right here. If my hand is out of the way, right? And that leaf is on one of the branches, but this isn't one of the branches right here, like what I was also talking about. It's growing from way down there on this other branch, right here. It's growing all the way up here. And my camera work today is really crappy. So this branch is right here, and it's growing all the way to the top. It's this piece here. And that branch is a newer branch, and it's growing in a crazy direction, just straight up through the middle of the tree. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm going to be taking off, because this was the original branch, and you can see it's right here. That's the whole branch. So that other piece was just growing crazy through the top of it, and this is another one like on the other tree. That's a new branch. So I kind of like it. I kind of like it here, but I don't want it to be that big. So I'm going to chop that back, and I'm going to chop it back down to here, because then hopefully it'll put a branch out right there at the end of this leaf. And then this is what I was also talking about. They'll just grow random branches out of places. So this is the main branch, and it's just randomly growing one right there. And that wasn't there last year. And then it does it like this. One will grow way faster than the other one. So you have to be careful and keep the one that's going to grow way faster trimmed back so that it doesn't outgrow the other branches too much. And this one I'm just going to cut a lot of them back, I guess, because there's quite a few of them that are doing that. And I'm going to get rid of this one. You want it to go from 1 to 2, but you also want it to go from 1 to 2 where the branches are going in a direction that isn't impeding everything else on the tree. And the citrus trees that I've worked with, the grapefruit, the lemons, they backbud really well, and they backbud just crazy, like all over the place. So if you cut something off, make it look like this, then it's no worries. They'll recover unless you do this constantly. I mean, if you're chopping it way back like this constantly, it will kill it. But if you chop it back and let it grow, and then chop it back again and let it grow, let it recover, let it provide more strength to the tree again, and then chop it back again, then it really works really well. It recovers and continues to grow and backbud and all that. Alright, so I'm going to repot this. Alright, so I had to get a new pot for this one because the other pot was pretty jacked up. So this is an example of what I was trying to tell you earlier. This is not the roots from this tree. If I pull, this is actually what comes out of it. All of that is from this. This is grass, and obviously it's broke off because I tried pulling it out, but you can't really pull it out because that's what you got on the end of it. So if you can pull the weeds as soon as you see them, then they don't get all tangled into the root ball of your tree, and then you don't have to completely root it to get all of the fine hair-like roots out of your tree, because they will cause problems. And that could be a very good culprit for why they've been kind of a yellow color, and also why they haven't grown so great, and why they're getting as many pests as they're getting, because pests don't always bother really healthy trees. They're gonna bother the weaker trees first, and then if there's no weaker trees, then they'll try for the healthier trees, but they're more likely to attack your weaker trees than your healthier trees. So, okay, I think I got them all out of there. All right, so I'm gonna take this guy off because that is growing off in a crazy direction, growing out of the top of that root. And then also, I think I'm gonna take these two. Yeah, do something with these two. So they're growing right through everything. You don't want that. You kind of want your roots to grow in a radial pattern. You don't want them to grow through each other. So if I can separate them, then I'll separate them. If I can't, I'll probably just cut them off. This one I'm going to cut off. And this is something that you kind of want to do each time you repot a tree, is to go through the roots and look them over. The other trees I did look over a little bit, and they look to be alright. But this one's got this crazy trunk, which is awesome. But I don't want the roots growing over the top of everything else here. Weed. I want the roots growing over the top of each other like this. It causes problems in the future. And I'm not too worried about scratching up the trunk here. It'll be okay. If I was going to do a bonsai, this would be the one. Oh, that's pretty cool. Nice fat trunk. It's nice and squat right now. I cut off a major branch last year. Or this spring, I think that was the spring. Alright, that looks good. So let's go ahead and put this in some soil here. And this will be just fine for this tree for this next year. It's got plenty of roots. I'm not going to take off too many more of these roots. Just leave all this on here. And take these big chunks out. Alright, so I'm going to repot this and come back to you. Alright, so there's that one. And clean up the leaf a little bit. And I'm not going to be watering these because this soil is actually relatively moist. And if you pinch it together, it stays together. So, but it's not sopping wet like that other soil is. So I'm gonna go grab another tree. Alright, so this one has a lot of roots. I mean, not roots, a lot of weeds. This is terrible. That's probably why it's yellow. Can't get enough nutrients out of the soil. But as you can see, it doesn't have folded leaves. So that's a good sign. But still don't want all these weeds in here. And I'm going to take some of this, just cut it out for now. Put it in the compost. Okay, so this one doesn't have a whole lot of pest issues. Looks like some of the leaves might have gotten mold, or it might just be dirt. I'm not 100% sure. Looks like it might just be dirt because the leaf looks fine underneath it. It's got one leaf down here that's got a chew mark in it. Just a couple of them. So this, I think this is still a grapefruit tree. I think this is still a grapefruit tree. It does have a few actually. Leaves that have damage. But it's really yellow, and I don't know exactly why it's really yellow. Could be because of overwatering. Yeah, because this is mud. I mean, this is like, you could almost wring this out, mud. So I'm gonna go take the soil out of this, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that the fact that that soil was really, really wet, sopping wet, and the amount of weeds that were in there had an effect on the color of the leaves. So we're going to find out by putting it in a different type of pot that has a lot more drainage capabilities, and I'm gonna make sure and keep the weeds out of it a little bit better this year. When I go out there to water, I'm gonna look. If there's weeds, I'm gonna pull them. The little weeds, I'll pull them with tweezers if I have to, because I want to keep these trees alive. I'm trying to get all the extra tiny roots out of here from the weeds, so that I don't have immediate issues with weeds. Okay, so there's that. So I'm going to go ahead and pot this in here. I'm leaving all these roots on it. And obviously this pot is a little bit smaller, which will be good, because then once this fills out this pot with roots, I'll just put it in the ground. So I think I am going to put all these in the ground next year. I know I've said that a couple of times, but I changed my mind a lot, so convincing myself that it's a good idea to put them all in the ground next year. So I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to do. I'm using the back of the shovel. I'm not jamming it in here. I'm just basically pushing it just ever so slightly, tapping the top of the soil to pack it in there. You don't want to jam it in there with the shovel because then you break everything off, all the roots and everything. So it's nice and solid. So I'm gonna go grab another tree. Okay, so I got the next tree here, and I already cleaned this one off. I don't want to get too repetitive with everything. So this one is actually the tree that I got from a cutting from my mom's cutie tree. So you can tell because for one, it had a tag in it. It doesn't have any words on it anymore, but I wrote on it. And you can tell kind of also because of the leaves. You can see that it's just one leaf. It doesn't have the large second leaf right there, or second part to the leaf. So this is definitely the cutie tree, and it looks like it's got some dirty trunk. I don't know if that's it. Becoming a woody trunk, or no, it's definitely dirt. I'm gonna have to clean this off later. But I'm going to trim all the ends of this off, and I'm going to repot it. The leaves don't look like they're chewed up like all the other trees were. Maybe a couple of leaves, but not as bad. So I'm not going to worry too much about all of that. I'm actually kind of wondering if a grasshopper ate all the leaves off the end of these branches. I'm not going to worry too much about cutting all the ends of these branches off and the tree looking weird, because it'll grow all new stuff come spring. I might cut it back quite drastically right now, so that when it does grow back, it grows better branches. I'm cutting them in such a way that the new branches grow in the right direction. I'm taking this off. I don't want that to go crazy, because it's going to. Kind of wondering if maybe I'll leave it to thicken up the trunk. No, because that'll cause crazy inverse taper, or that'll cause inverse taper. So I'm not gonna keep it. And these will heal over pretty easily. So there's that one. All right, so I got another tree here, and this one was also in one of those blue pots. So I'm gonna put it in this pot, but the roots looked a lot better, so I left a lot more soil in it, and it is wet. So I put the soil in the bottom. Use my shovel. Back it down a little bit. I try to make sure all the roots are going downwards. Don't want to catch them on the edge of the pot and flip them up. There we go. Good. This is a little bit different process. If you leave more of the soil in the roots, basically what you're going to be doing is pushing soil past the roots next to, or in between the pot and the roots, so that you can secure it in the pot that way, and so that obviously you don't want any air pockets in between the roots and the container. The roots typically go out to the edge of the container and then they go down. So you want the edge of the container to be soil for the roots to go into. That's why it looks like I'm packing it a lot harder going in between, because I am, but I'm not damaging any of the roots. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so this one I'm gonna chop the top branch. Yeah, you can see it, this one here. I'm gonna cut that guy off. Pretty short, right there. I'm gonna open it up just a little bit by taking off the leaves that have some kind of markings from pests on them. This one's actually looking really good. Somehow it wasn't affected as badly by the pot being muddy soil, but the soil that was actually in this pot wasn't the same kind of soil as the other trees, so it was a little bit more coarse soil, so it drained better. So that's why this tree has greener leaves on it. Now I'm just gonna try and open it up a little bit, give it some room to grow. So these trees grow a branch out from where the leaf is, just like a lot of trees do. So that I'm taking off the leaf at the base of the branch to free up some space, give it a little bit more air. This one's got a lot more branching than most of the other ones did, which is awesome. So hopefully this one will do really well. If I'm gonna do bonsai, this would probably be a good one to do a bonsai with also. This is the branch, like what I was telling you with that other tree. This is the branch that took off and ran last year. It's very straight, very, doesn't look good. It's honestly, it looks terrible. I'm gonna take it off. I'm gonna use this guy to start with. There we go. I might try to grow a tree out of that. Yeah, I'm gonna try to grow a tree out of that. I'm going to clean this up. Pretty gnarly branch chop right there, so clean it up, make it look nice. Kind of wondering if all the branch damage is from aphids. I haven't seen a whole lot of bugs on them, but it is pretty chilly today, and a couple of the trees had ants in the soil, so ants kind of indicates aphids, because aphids chew on the branch and then the ants like the sap that the aphids let out of the tree. So aphids attract ants to your trees. So if you got a tree that's got a bunch of ants on it, you might want to check for aphids and see about repotting the tree to get rid of the ants. I think I've told you this before, but be really careful. The fire ants out here, and I don't know how they are where you're at, if you have ants everywhere y'all are at, but pretty sure there's ants all over the world. So anyway, ants are gonna try and protect their home and their food source, so they bite. Yeah, I like that a lot better. It's kind of leaning now because of the branch being gone. See if I can adjust the planting angle a little bit. And you can use kind of the side of the chopstick. This is a metal chopstick, so it kind of helps with this type of process, using the side of it to push the soil down in there. A wooden chopstick, that'll probably break it off, so use the fat end. Might just use the shovel, grab a little bit more dirt. Oh, bumped the camera, sorry. Yeah, that's a lot better. I like that better. I think there is one more tree, so I'm gonna go grab that one. Okay, so this tree is a cutting off of one of our lemon trees that is producing lemons every so often if they can survive the grasshopper. So I've got a bud here and one tiny little bud over here and one little tiny bud right there. Yeah, it looks like that's it. Kind of sporadic. It's kind of a cool tree. I cut this off, I think it was a year ago. And this is the roots. It was in a smaller pot, so it's definitely ready for a repot anyway. And the soil that I used was a coarser soil. So I'm going to put it in a bigger pot here and see how well it grows. So I broke up the side of the soil here just a little bit to give the roots a little bit of direction in which way they should be growing, so that they won't just grow into themselves here, just like this. Okay, so I'm going to take off some of the dead ends here. The yellow leaf. Because this is looking pretty decent. This one does have like the sporadic branch growth that I was talking about. It's got branches growing like all up in everybody's business. See, like there's one going out this way, that way, and then one down. I'm going to take the downward branch off. And this one's growing across everything, so I'm going to take that one completely off. And this one's a lemon. This isn't a grapefruit, and you can tell by how it's got an individual leaf. It doesn't have the second leaf, but it's got a thicker base to the leaf. So that's kind of how you can tell it's a citrus, I guess. But it doesn't have that second leaf on it. Be careful because there's a flower bud right here too, and I think that's a flower bud right there. Don't want to take that off. I'm going to take this branch off here. I'm going to take this one off because that's going up into everything. Let's see how it grows, like a couple branches right together. This one's growing straight up on this branch. I don't want that. Alright, so that looks good for this tree. And that does it for all the trees. They all look at least a little bit more maintained, a little bit more ready for wintertime, so that they can start growing again for next spring. So pretty exciting. So the reason why I repotted these during the wintertime is because here in Florida, that's the best time to repot them. I'm not 100% sure if that's the same everywhere, but I know that their hardiness is, I think it's a level 9 or 10 hardiness range. They can survive some of the colder temperatures as long as it doesn't drop well below freezing. I had them outside last year and it dropped down into the 20s overnight, so they can survive that. A lot of them did drop some leaves after that, but then they recovered pretty well because it warmed back up into the 60s during the day, and then it got into the 30s and then 40s, and then it was summertime again, and then it was 90 and all that stuff. So so they do pretty well, and they can survive some cold weather. But if you're in a really cold climate, I would definitely bring them in, keep them in pots, bring them in during the wintertime. So yeah, thank you for watching this very interesting video. I'm sure I don't know if I'm going to edit a lot of it out. Pretty sure I said some crazy stuff, so when I come across that, I'll get rid of that stuff. But anyway, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.